You poor girl. You never had a head for success, my father said, shaking his head. His words echoed in my mind long after he'd said them. He had no idea what those words would set in motion. I remember that day so clearly. It was just another Sunday afternoon at the family's weekly gathering. Dad was in his usual spot, sipping his beer and bragging about the new lawnmower he'd bought for his landscaping business. He was so proud of it, like it was the best investment he'd ever made. I sat across from him, quietly picking at my food, trying to swallow the knot in my throat. You really should think about joining the business, Anna, he said again, as if he hadn't said it 1,000 times before. This tech stuff you're chasing? It's a fantasy. Women don't belong in finance, especially not in something as big as Wall Street. His words cut deep. It wasn't just the fact that he didn't believe in me. It was the way he had always seen me. I wasn't the daughter he hoped for. To him, I was just a girl who couldn't get things right. While my brothers worked alongside him, learning the ins and outs of the family business, I was the one who always seemed to be wasting time with my computer. The fact that I had started a small tech company, something he thought was too ambitious, too risky, was just more proof that I wasn't cut out for success. You're not meant for that world, Anna, he had told me a year ago when I first decided to start my own tech company. You've got to face facts. Women like you can't just waltz into a world dominated by men and expect to succeed. His words replayed in my mind as I excused myself from the table. I couldn't stay there, not with the tension growing thicker by the minute. I went to my car, locked the doors, and let the tears fall. But they weren't just tears of frustration. They were tears of determination. I had been working on an algorithm that could predict stock market trends. I spent countless nights hunched over my laptop while my friends went out and lived their lives. But the more time I spent working, the more it became clear I had something. I wasn't just a girl playing with computers. I was building something real. Something that could change everything. For weeks, I had been getting rejection after rejection from venture capitalists. They would smile politely, pat me on the back, and tell me I wasn't experienced enough. Maybe next time, they would say, and I'd walk out of their offices, my heart sinking a little more each time. But I refused to give up. I taped the rejection letters to my wall. Every no became fuel for my fire. I had to prove them all wrong. I had to show my father that I wasn't a failure. Then, one day, it happened. The email? The one that would change everything. I was sitting at my tiny desk, staring at the screen when it appeared in my inbox. Blackwater Capital interested in your algorithm. My breath caught in my throat. Blackwater Capital. The firm that had always been out of reach for someone like me. The firm that dealt in billions. They wanted to license my technology for $10 million. I stared at the email in disbelief. Was this real? I read it over and over again, each time trying to convince myself it wasn't some cruel joke. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Not yet. The next day, I signed the deal in New York City. I sat across from Patricia Donovan, the CEO of Blackwater Capital. She raised her glass to me and smiled. To the future of finance, she said. I clinked my glass with hers, my heart pounding. This wasn't just a deal. It was my ticket to proving everyone wrong. 2 weeks later, I was trending nationwide. They had just announced me as the youngest female founder on Wall Street. I'd gone from an unknown woman trying to make a name for herself to someone the world was starting to take seriously. I had done it. I had made it. But even as the accolades poured in, I couldn't forget the way my father had looked at me. The disappointment in his eyes. At the family reunion, I drove in alone. No one knew I was coming. I hadn't called ahead. Didn't want to give them the chance to prepare themselves. I pulled into the driveway of our old family house, the roar of the engine cutting through the silence. When the car stopped, I could feel their eyes on me before they even saw me. I stepped out of my car, the Ferrari Roma gleaming in the sunlight. My family was standing in a circle, chatting and laughing, but as soon as they saw me, they went quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the engine still running, the air between us thick with tension. My father stood frozen, his hand still gripping the beer can, his mouth slightly open. He hadn't expected this. I could see it in his face. He never expected me to make it this far. He never thought I'd be the one to rise above his harsh words, to prove that a woman could make it in a world like Wall Street. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The silence said it all. "Anna?" My mother called from the back of the group, her voice uncertain. She was the only one who still had hope in me, still believed in what I could do. But I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I was standing in the place I had once wanted to prove myself, on my own terms. My father finally cleared his throat, breaking the silence. What's all this?" he asked, trying to mask his surprise with indifference. "I'm just here to visit," I said quietly. "And to show you I didn't fail." The words hung in the air as I walked past him, my head held high. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about showing him how wrong he was. It was about proving that success isn't defined by the work you do with your hands. It's about the work you do with your mind. As I entered the house, I couldn't help but feel a small victory. Not just for myself, but for every person who had ever been told they didn't belong, that they couldn't succeed. This was just the beginning. The days that followed my return to the family house were strange. It was as if a new version of myself had arrived, and nobody knew how to deal with her. I could feel their eyes on me every time I walked into a room. My cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone had heard about my deal. The media coverage had been everywhere. My father hadn't said a word to me since I showed up in the Ferrari. He hadn't even acknowledged my presence when I handed him the key, like I was still the girl who was never good enough. But even as the world seemed to cheer me on, there was something missing. I wasn't quite ready to let go of the past. The feeling of being overlooked, dismissed by the people who mattered most. That night, after the family reunion, I drove back to my apartment in the city, the flashing lights of the streets outside not quite matching the emptiness I felt inside. The deal with Blackwater had been a breakthrough, yes, but something still gnawed at me. I hadn't yet earned my father's respect. He hadn't looked at me like a real success. He hadn't looked at me like I mattered. And that was what I wanted most of all, his approval. But approval wasn't coming. Not from him. And it wasn't coming from the industry either. Just a few days after the announcement, I got a call from the managing director at Blackwater Capital. He was an older man, well-versed in the harshness of the finance world. "Anna, I need to be upfront with you," he said, his voice cool, detached. "We're reconsidering our licensing agreement with your algorithm. There's been some internal debate about the feasibility of scaling it the way we initially anticipated. We're not sure it's the breakthrough we thought it was." I could feel my heart sink. This wasn't the first time I had been rejected, but this one stung. I wasn't just being told no. I was being told that my work wasn't good enough. Again. "I understand," I said, trying to steady my voice. "But I've already demonstrated its success. The initial projections—" "It's not that simple," he interrupted. "We're talking about market shifts, changing trends. We need a more secure, tangible product for the kind of clients we cater to. I'm sorry, Anna, but we're going to need to pull back." My mind went blank. The words, the rejection, they weren't just business. It was personal. I wasn't just a number to them. I was someone who had poured years of my life into this. And suddenly I was nothing but another failed tech dream. "Are you saying you're backing out?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Look, Anna, I think you've got potential, but you've got to prove it in a different way," he said. "This isn't the right time. Maybe next year if you have a more refined product. But for now, this is where we stand." I hung up the phone, my hand trembling slightly. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the blank wall in front of me. It wasn't fair. I had worked harder than anyone. I had sacrificed everything to get here. And yet, It wasn't enough. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it wasn't the end. This was just one setback, and there would be more. But the feeling of being rejected, again, was suffocating. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours researching every aspect of my algorithm, every potential weakness, every flaw. I ran it through new simulations, adjusted the code, and tried again and again to perfect it. I wasn't going to give up. I couldn't. The idea of having my father, having everyone, be right was unbearable. The next morning, I woke up to an email from one of the junior analysts at Blackwater. He was apologizing for the rejection, stating that it wasn't about the potential of my work, but the timing. That gave me a little hope. Maybe there was a chance to salvage the deal after all. I wasn't going to let the narrative of my failure become the story of who I was. But as the days went on, that lingering feeling of inadequacy didn't fade. The rejections kept piling up. Another firm turned me down. A second one said my product wasn't scalable. I was starting to feel like I was running in circles, trying to get somewhere but not getting any closer to the finish line. It was beginning to feel like the world was conspiring against me. And yet, somehow, my father's words from all those years ago kept coming back to me, echoing in my mind like a bitter truth. You never had a head for success. I knew what he meant. He had spent his life building his landscaping business from the ground up, using sweat and grit to create something tangible. I, on the other hand, was trying to create something invisible, something that wasn't even understood by most people. Was he right? Was I just chasing a dream that wasn't meant to be? But deep down, I knew something else. I had come too far to quit now. I had spent too many sleepless nights, too many hours alone in front of my computer, to let this be the end. That evening, as I sat staring at my laptop, I received a message from my cousin, Evan. He had seen the latest coverage on me in the media, and he wanted to meet. He said he had some big news for me. I wasn't in the mood to meet anyone, especially after the week I'd had, but something about his message made me want to take a chance. Maybe this was the break I needed. I agreed to meet him the next day, but little did I know, this meeting would change everything. The next day, I met Evan at the cafe downtown. He was sitting at a table by the window, his usual grin plastered across his face, but I could tell something was different. His eyes were more serious, more focused than I'd ever seen them. "You all right?" he asked, his tone quiet as he slid a cup of coffee toward me. I didn't answer at first. Instead, I stared down at the cup, trying to gather my thoughts. The rejection from Blackwater was still fresh, and the rejection from the other firms only added to the growing sense of failure. My vision for the future felt blurry, like I was walking through fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was at the edge of something, maybe even the edge of losing it all. I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired." Evan raised an eyebrow. He wasn't buying it. He leaned forward, looking at me with the same concern he'd had when we were kids, when we would stay up all night talking about our dreams, never thinking they wouldn't come true. We'd promised each other that we'd make it, that we'd show everyone we weren't just products of our small town. "You sure?" he pressed. "You don't look fine. You look like someone who's about to give up." The words stung, but he wasn't wrong. That's exactly how I felt. The weight of the world, of every rejection, every doubt, every voice that said I couldn't do it felt suffocating. My father's words haunted me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't belong here. Maybe I wasn't cut out for success. I exhaled, my shoulders heavy. It's just been a rough week. I've had so many people telling me no. Maybe they're right, Evan. Maybe I've been chasing a dream that was never meant to be. Evan's eyes softened and he leaned back in his chair. "Anna, listen to me. You're not the same person who started this journey. You've learned more in these past months than some people learn in their entire careers. If you quit now, it's not just about the business. It's about everything you fought for. You can't just let it go because a few people don't believe in you." His words hit me harder than I expected. But he was right. This wasn't just about tech or money. It was about proving something deeper to myself. I had come so far, fought so hard. And the idea of giving up now, of letting everything go because of a few setbacks, was devastating. What if it's just not enough? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Then you make it enough, he said firmly. You're stronger than this. You have the power to turn this around. His belief in me was the push I needed. I took a deep breath, wiped my face, and nodded. You're right. I'm not going to let them win. I've worked too hard. Evan smiled, the familiar glint of mischief returning to his eyes. That's the Anna I know. Now, about the big news. I raised an eyebrow. What's that? I've been talking to a couple of investors who actually get what you're doing. They see the potential. They think your algorithm can still be a game changer. They just want to help you rework it, build it into something more solid. They're ready to back you up if you're in. My heart skipped. Are you serious? He nodded. This could be the break you need. These guys are legit. They're not afraid of taking a chance on something new, even if it's a little risky. I sat back, processing the news. The words game changer echoed in my mind. I had been looking for validation from the wrong places, waiting for the big players to see what I was capable of. But maybe I didn't need them. Maybe this was the opportunity I had been waiting for. I'm in, I said, more sure of myself than I had felt in weeks. I'll take it. Evan smiled, relieved. I knew you would. You've got this, Anna. You just need to trust yourself. As we finished our coffee, I started to feel the weight lifting. It wasn't going to be easy. It never was. But I had one thing those other firms didn't: belief in my vision. I didn't need them to tell me I was capable anymore. I had come this far on my own, and now I was going to prove it. That evening, I sat at my desk, the same one I had used countless times before. The same desk where I had spent so many hours rewriting lines of code, where I had dreamed of this moment, the moment when it would all come together. I got to work. The days blurred together as I refined my algorithm, working late into the night, reworking every detail. This wasn't just about improving my product. It was about proving something to myself. I wasn't going to let this failure define me. I was going to show the world what I was capable of, no matter how long it took. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to San Francisco, meeting with the investors Evan had introduced me to. They were as eager as I was to get started, and as I sat across from them in their sleek downtown office, I knew this was the moment everything could change. The deal was small, at least compared to the ones I had dreamed of. But it didn't matter. I didn't need Wall Street's validation anymore. I had found my place in this world, and it wasn't going to be defined by the men who had told me I couldn't make it. The future was in my hands now, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. The flight to San Francisco felt like a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about the investors, about what this meeting could mean for the future of my company. I had spent years building this algorithm, pushing myself past limits I didn't know I had, but I still wasn't sure if I was ready for what this could bring. As the plane touched down, a wave of nerves hit me. This was real. This wasn't just a hopeful email or another rejection. This was a chance to turn everything around. I met the investors at their office downtown. Their sleek, glass-walled conference room was a far cry from my cluttered apartment. The polished table, the view of the city below, the cold, professional air. It all felt so out of reach. But here I was, sitting across from men who could change the course of everything I'd worked for. Anna, said Ben, one of the lead investors, a man in his 50s with an air of quiet authority. We've been following your progress for some time now. What we've seen is promising, and we think your algorithm has real potential. But you know how the game works. We need more than just an idea. We need to see the numbers, the proof. I nodded, trying to keep my hands steady. I understand. I've been working on refining the model. I've already made some adjustments based on the feedback I received. and we're ready to back you," Ben continued, leaning forward. "But here's the thing. We're not just looking for another product in the market. We want something that can disrupt it. Something big. And we believe you're the one who can make that happen." I felt my heart beat faster. They weren't just offering to invest. They were offering a chance to change everything. But there was still a catch. There always was. "We'd like to bring you on board with our accelerator program," Ben said. "We'll give you the resources, the mentorship, and the network to scale. In return, we need equity in your company. 40%. I took a deep breath. 40% was a lot. It was more than I had ever anticipated giving up. But the value they offered, their experience, their connections, could help me take this to levels I hadn't even dreamed of. This was the opportunity I needed. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the chance to turn my vision into something real. "I think we can make it work," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I'll need to ensure that the terms align with my vision for the company. I've been building this from the ground up. It's important to me that I maintain control of the direction we take." Ben smiled. "We can work with that. We believe in you, Anna. You'll still be the one driving this forward." I felt a rush of relief wash over me. This was it. I had made it. The deal was done. The next few months passed in a blur of meetings, late nights, and countless calls with investors, developers, and advisors. The accelerator program was everything I had hoped for and more. With their support, I was able to scale my business faster than I could have imagined. I refined my algorithm, built a team, and expanded my reach. But as the business grew, so did the pressure. The expectations mounted. It wasn't just about proving myself anymore. Now I had a responsibility to the investors, to my team, to everyone who had believed in me when no one else would. Despite the successes, there was a nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. The doubt I had always carried with me. What if I wasn't enough? What if I couldn't meet these new expectations? What if I failed? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to entertain them. I had come too far to turn back now. One afternoon, I was sitting in my new office in San Francisco, looking over the latest round of data. The numbers were good. No, they were better than good. But the reality of my father's voice, the one that still echoed in my head, kept creeping in. "You're not meant for this world," he had said. "You're just chasing some pipe dream." I shook my head. He wasn't right. This wasn't just a dream. This was reality. I was making it happen. It wasn't easy, but it was real. Just as I was lost in thought, I received a text from Evan. It was a screenshot of a news article that made my heart stop. "Anna Langford, Wall Street's youngest female founder, shakes up financial technology industry." The article detailed the success of my company, the deals I had secured, and the rapid growth we were experiencing. It was the kind of media attention I had only dreamed about. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Investors, family, old friends. But it was the message from my mother that hit hardest. "I knew you could do it, Anna. I'm so proud of you." It was the first time in my life I felt like my mother really understood what I had been trying to do. She had always been supportive, but her quiet belief in me had always been overshadowed by my father's dismissal. Now, for the first time, I felt like my mother saw me. She saw me for what I had become. Not just the girl trying to make it, but the woman who had. I spent the next few days working tirelessly, trying to prepare for the next big pitch. Investors were lining up, eager to get in on the ground floor. But despite the success, there was one thing I couldn't ignore: the price of all this growth. The more my company expanded, the more I felt myself drifting away from the person I had once been. The person who wanted to prove herself to her father, to her family, to the world. The further I moved into the spotlight, the more I wondered if I was still the same person who had started this journey in the first place. I had everything I'd ever wanted: the validation, the success, the money. But was it enough? And then, out of nowhere, my phone rang. It was my father. "Anna, he said, his voice gruff. "I've been thinking about you, and I think we need to talk." I stared at my phone, my father's name flashing across the screen. My heart beat faster with each passing second. For the first time in years, I found myself hesitant to answer. What did he want? After everything, after my success, why was he calling me now? I took a deep breath and swiped the screen. "Dad," I said, my voice steady but guarded. "Anna," he began, his tone softer than I expected. "I've been thinking a lot about what you've been doing, about your company, and, well, I wanted to talk." I leaned back in my chair, the tension rising in my chest. "About what?" "I want to see you," he said. "It's time we had a conversation." A part of me wanted to say no, to hang up and ignore whatever he had to say. But another part of me, the part that had been trying to prove myself to him for years, knew that this conversation was inevitable. It was time for the reckoning. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "When?" "Tomorrow," he replied. "I'll be at your place. We need to talk face to face." I agreed, though a knot formed in my stomach. The last time we'd had a real conversation like this, it hadn't ended well. I knew this wouldn't be any different. The next day, I paced around my apartment, trying to steady myself. I couldn't stop replaying the last conversation I'd had with him in my mind, the one where he told me I wasn't cut out for success. It was his voice that echoed the loudest in my head, not the success I'd worked so hard for. When the knock on the door came, I was ready. I opened it, and there he stood, my father. The same man who had made me feel small my entire life. But now, he wasn't just the father I had struggled to live up to. He was the man who had finally come to terms with the fact that I had done it without him. "Anna," he said, his voice hesitant as he stepped inside. "It's been a while." "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It has." We sat down in the living room, the silence between us thick and uncomfortable. I could feel the weight of everything unspoken between us. The years of frustration, the disapproval, the missed opportunities for connection. Finally, he spoke. "I've been watching you. The articles, the interviews. You're making waves, Anna. Bigger ones than I thought were possible." I stayed silent, unsure of how to react. The praise was unexpected. It wasn't the kind of praise I had dreamed of coming from him, but it was praise nonetheless. I wanted to believe it meant something, but a part of me wasn't sure. "You've done well for yourself," he continued, his eyes searching mine. I can't deny that. I wanted to say something that would acknowledge his words, but it felt like the moment had passed. The sting of his past remarks was still fresh. He'd told me, time and again, that I would never succeed. Now he was saying the opposite. Was this his way of admitting he was wrong? "But I still don't understand what you've done, Anna," he added, his voice growing more serious. "I've spent my whole life building something real, something tangible. He paused, looking for the right words. "You've built a company, yes, but it's not real to me. It's numbers on a screen. You can't touch it. You can't feel it like I could feel the sweat on my brow after a long day of work. That's real, Anna." I couldn't hold it in anymore. My anger flared up, the years of trying to prove myself to him suddenly boiling over. "You think what I've built isn't real?" I asked, my voice rising. "You think all those sleepless nights, all those moments when I had nothing, no money, no support, that it wasn't real?" He shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze. "I'm just saying, Anna, that there's a difference between a real business and a tech startup. What you've built is impressive, yes, but it's not the same as what I've done. I've provided for this family with my hands. I've given people jobs. You don't get that, do you?" "I get it," I snapped, feeling the heat of his words sink into my chest. "You think what I've done isn't enough. You think it's just some game. But I've worked harder than you ever gave me credit for, Dad. I've spent every day trying to make something of myself, trying to prove to you that I am worth something. And now you're sitting here, telling me my success doesn't matter." My voice cracked, the weight of everything I had held back spilling out all at once. "I never wanted to be like you," I continued, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "I didn't want to be stuck in a job where I had to break my back just to get by. I wanted more, and now I have it. I didn't need your approval. I never did." My father was silent, his eyes locked on me, his face unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might leave, might walk away from me again like he always had. But instead, he stood up and walked over to the window. He stood there for a long time, his back to me, staring out into the city. I could see his hands clenching into fists, his jaw tight. Then, without turning around, he said, "I was wrong, Anna." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart skipped a beat as I processed what he was saying. "I was wrong," he repeated, his voice thick. "I never should have doubted you. I should have believed in you. I should have been proud of you from the start. I'm sorry." For the first time in my life, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My father had said the words I had longed to hear, but I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to say something, but I couldn't. I didn't know if I could forgive him for all the years of doubt, all the times he had told me I wasn't good enough. But I knew this was a turning point, not just for him, but for me. I wasn't the girl I had been when I left Charleston. I had proved to myself that I was capable, that I was enough. I stood up slowly and walked over to him, standing beside him at the window. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for saying that." He nodded, his face softening as he looked out at the city. "I don't know if I can fix everything I've done, Anna, but I'm going to try. And I'm proud of you. I really am." And for the first time in years, I believed him. It had been a few weeks since my conversation with my father, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things had shifted between us. It wasn't an immediate change. He still had his pride, still saw the world through the lens of his own experiences, but something had softened, and that made all the difference. I had returned to San Francisco after our talk, diving back into the day-to-day grind of running my company. The investors were thrilled with our progress, the team was growing, and our numbers were through the roof. We were on track to hit even more significant milestones in the next year. But it wasn't just the business that had changed. I had changed. The weight of the doubt and frustration that I had carried for so long, the need for my father's approval had started to lift. The validation I had sought from him had finally come, but it hadn't been the end of my story. I had proven to myself that I was capable long before he apologized. The turning point wasn't the business deal, or the recognition, or even the Ferrari. It was that moment when my father finally admitted he was wrong. When he said, "I'm proud of you," it felt like a door had opened, and for the first time I was standing on the other side. I no longer needed to prove my worth to him or anyone else. I had already done that. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. Just when I thought I had it all figured out, my father called me again. "Anna." His voice crackled on the other end of the line. "I've been thinking about everything, about how things have changed, and I realized something. I can't do it alone anymore." I felt a strange sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. "What do you mean?" "I need your help," he said, the words laced with something I hadn't expected. Vulnerability. The landscaping business. It's failing. I can't compete with the bigger companies. I thought I could, but I can't keep up. I need your expertise, your technology. I need you to help me turn this around. I was silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. My father, the man who had never once asked for help, was now asking me. And something in me knew this was more than just about saving his business. This was about building a bridge between our worlds, combining what he had built with what I had created. "I can help you," I said, my voice steady. "But it's going to be a partnership. I'll bring my technology, but we're going to do this together. It can't just be about saving your business. It has to be about moving forward. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I understand, he finally said. I'm ready to learn, whatever it takes. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, planning, and strategizing. I flew back to Charleston, not just to visit, but to help. My father had agreed to bring his business into the digital age, to integrate the technology I had developed into his day-to-day operations. It was a huge step for him, a leap of faith. But as we sat in his office, surrounded by spreadsheets and old photos of the business, I realized how far we had both come. He was no longer the man who had belittled my dreams. He was the man who was willing to change. And I wasn't just the daughter trying to prove herself. I was his partner. We worked tirelessly over the next few months, combining our expertise, his in traditional industries, mine in technology. Slowly, we started to see results. The landscaping business began to turn a profit again, but it wasn't just the financial success that mattered. It was the transformation of our relationship. It was the trust we had built, the understanding that had grown between us. One day, as we sat in his office reviewing the latest numbers, my father looked up at me. I never thought this was possible, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But you were right, Anna. It's not about choosing one way over the other. It's about combining the best of both worlds. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. I'm glad you're seeing that, Dad. As we continued to grow the business, I found myself at the forefront of something new. Not just a financial technology startup, but a company that merged the traditional with the modern. We were making the landscape industry more efficient, helping local businesses thrive, and creating jobs in the process. My father's legacy was intact, but now it was something that could be passed on to the next generation. A few months later, we held a launch event to announce our new business model. It wasn't just a company-wide celebration. It was a family celebration. My father, who had once dismissed everything I did, was now standing beside me, proudly presenting our new direction to the world. I never imagined I'd be here, he said in front of our employees and investors, his voice loud and clear. But I've learned a lot from my daughter. It's time to embrace the future, and that future is now. I watched him as he spoke, a small but genuine smile on his face. It wasn't the approval I had once longed for. It was something far more meaningful, a mutual respect built on years of struggle, growth, and ultimately understanding. As we wrapped up the event and people began to mingle, I felt my phone buzz. It was a message from my mother. Your father's still not great with words, but he's proud of you. He just doesn't know how to say it. I smiled as I read the message. It wasn't the words I had waited so long to hear, but it was enough. It was a reminder that sometimes the most important things are the things left unsaid. As I walked outside to join the rest of the team, I saw my father talking to some of the employees. His back was straighter, his posture more confident. The man who had once told me I wasn't cut out for success was now leading his company into a new era. And for the first time, I didn't need to prove anything to him. I had already done it.